Welcome everyone to Module 2 of our Summer Sketch Camp. I'm so glad that you're here because today we'll be creating the illusion of depth and space with tones and textures while drawing a summer sea turtle. And as always, I'm going to guide you through this step by step from beginning to end, so grab your sketchbook and art supplies and let's get started. On the left, I have an assortment of mechanical pencils that I like to use for our sketch tutorials. This is a 0.7mm mechanical pencil with a 2B graphite stick. Now this is the pencil that I like to start my drawings off with. Now if you don't have one of these, you can use a standard pencil or whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now the first thing we want to do before we get into all the details is define the position and composition of our drawing. So we're going to start by sketching a line coming down across our page. Let's start from the top left. Just going to lightly work our way across with a straight line. Now this is the center of the body. Just going all the way across. Now on the top left side, let's sketch out a circle for the head. Starting from the very top, just going to lightly work our way around. I just want to define the size of the head, going across that center line. Now along the bottom, draw a smaller circle. And this is for the base of the head or the neck. Now let's connect the top and bottom circle with a straight angled line coming down. And then the bottom to the right side with another straight angled line. And now this is the perimeter of the head. We're going to use this line to separate the shell from the body. So let's start on top of the neck. Just going to curve the body, going up, go across, and then back down toward the center line. It's almost like a large half circle. And I want to draw the bottom edge of the body. Let's go back, curve this down, across, and then up. So we got this little football shape in the center of our page. Now this is just the basic shape. We're going to come back and modify the shapes later. Now that we have the placement of the head and body, we're going to start layering in the arms and legs. Let's start along this line, coming down to right about here. Sketch another circle, about the same size as the base of the head. And we're going to add some shape to that fin. Let's start over on the right side. We're going to angle this down and out towards the bottom. And we're going to curve the front side. So we're going to go back over, curve this around, and then down. Again, we're just looking for the basic shape and size. Let's line up the top of the circle over on the left side. We're going to tuck this in behind the body. I'm just going to bend this out, curve this around, and then down towards the bottom. I'm just going to pull this out and go back up towards the top. Over on the back side of the body, we're just going to block in the back fin. So just going to go around and back in, almost like drawing an oval. Let's go back and erase the guidelines inside the head and inside the fin. Now that we have the basic pose and composition of our drawing, it's time to start adding some detail and shape to our sea turtle. So let's start with the head. Starting on the left side of our circle, I'm just going to draw a straight line going across. Now I'm going to rotate the head over towards the left side. So I'm going to draw that center seam, starting from the top of the head. Just going to bring this around and then down. And this is the center separating the eyes. Let's go all the way over towards the right side along the top of the head. Just going to lightly sketch out a circle for the eye. And then the left eye is going to get tucked in along the side. So we're going to move over. Just going to bulge this out and then in. Now I want to go in and start modifying the shape of the head. So in between the eyes, we're just going to flatten this off with a slight curve going across. Just bring this down the outside. Just going to add a little bit of volume to the head. Just bringing this down towards the neck and then curve in the neck. Let's go back to the front. We're just going to square off the head. Bring that down, rounding out the top corner, coming down towards the mouth, round out the bottom, coming in towards the neck, and we'll bend this down towards the body. Let's add some wrinkles across the base of the neck. Now right here, we're just going to continue to add these wrinkles coming down towards the bottom. So little curves going across. Now along the front, we're just going to add a seam for the mouth. Let's start along this line. Start with a curve that goes up. Just going to bring this all the way down. Just bend this up toward the top of the head. Now I'm going to add some shape to separate the shell to the body. Let's start from the base of the neck. Just want to curve this around, up above this fin. Just going to bend this down along the side. And then bend that back out towards the end of the body. Just going to extend this out a little bit further. So we're going to create a little bit of a lip. Bend this in towards the top of the shell. Now we're going to go back. Just modify the shape of the shell, going across, flattening off the top with a slight curve, and come down the outside. Now before we get into the body, let's add some more detail to that front fin. We're going to start up here. Just going to modify the shape, coming around. Now I'm going to work our way across the front edge of that fin. So we're going to pull this in, come down. Now I want to make this fin a little bit larger because it's in the foreground. So we're going to extend this all the way down towards the bottom of our page and then out. Now along the back side, let's go back up to the top. I want to add these little curves, these little bumps across the back of the fin. It's almost like drawing these little scales. Now we're just aiming back down toward the tip of the fin. Let's just rough this in. Let's go back to the left side. We're going to draw the base of that fin going around. Now there's a thick ridge that goes across the inside and then down. Let's modify the shape across the top, round out the fin. Again, just adding a little bit more detail and shape. Round out the tip. Now I'm just going to add a few bumps along the inside. Just working our way back up towards the top. Let's extend this down towards the bottom. Now we're going to go to the body, underneath the fin. Start by bending this down. Flatten off the body and come across. Let's continue over on the back side, in behind the fin. Going across and just bend that up underneath. And then we'll modify the shape of that back fin. Let's start up here. It's going to work within this bounding area. Add a few bumps along the outside. And then in. I'm going to go back and just lightly clean up our drawing one final time before we get into some more details and shading. Now at any stage of this lesson, if you're a little bit behind, you can always pause the video to get caught up. Now I'm going to go up to the head and start adding some details. Let's start with the eye. We're going to start right in the center. Start with the eye. We're just going to curve this up in the middle and then across. And just work our way around the bottom of the eye and then just tuck that up underneath. Now I'm going to go in just lightly shade the inside to get a little bit of contrast. Let's add that fold around the outside, just lightly sketching this around. And then from the eye, it's going to work our way out. So we're just adding some wrinkles. Let's go to the top of the eye. Around the bottom. Now your drawing doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Every sea turtle has different details. Let's go across the top of the head, over towards the left. Round this out, coming down towards the eye. I'm just going to pull the eye out and then down towards the mouth. I'm just going to lightly add those scales inside. So going up towards a point in the center of the head, going up towards the top, then around towards the bottom. I'm just going to lightly separate some of these scales. And we're going to come back and shade the inside. So we don't want to go too dark with this detail right now. Just going to add a few scales down here, around the head, and then down towards the bottom. Let's continue to add some wrinkles along the back of the neck, coming in. Now we're going to come back to the mouth, going up. It's going to add a little fold across the bottom of the chin, coming down and then up. Let's add a few notches. In towards the neck. Now we're going to start to add those wrinkles as we get down towards the bottom of the head. And get a little bit tighter as we come down. Now while we're here, it's going to work our way across that back fin. Just define that edge. And let's add a fold. Now there's some wrinkles across the top edge of that fin. Just going to curve across, just lightly adding some texture. And then right here, we're going to bend these down. Just going across that ridge. Go back and just add a little bit more shape to that fin. Just adding a few little random bumps on the outside. Also across the bottom of the fin. Go across the bottom edge of the body. And we're just going to add that shell across the chest. So we're going to start with a curve, going across, and then in the middle, just going to split this with another curve down the middle. Add some more wrinkles across the neck. Now I want to work our way across this fin. Again, starting at the very top, adding some folds coming around. And work our way around the outside. Now again, I'm just going to add a few bumps along the outside, just so that it's not perfectly smooth. Work our way across the back. Let's add a few points. Now I can go in and start adding some guides for those scales. Just a curve across the back, and then in the middle, going across. Now right along this edge, I'm just going to separate those scales, those large ones that go across, and we're going to come back and modify this after. These are just guides to help us with the shading process. Let's separate the center area. I'm just going to randomize the shape and size of these scales. Now I'm just going to work our way across the back, along this front edge. Now there's going to be some more wrinkles that go in between the shell and this fin. So I can go in just lightly, sketch out some more tighter wrinkles going across that arm. Separate the larger scales across the body. Now across the front edge of the shell, I'm going to add a guide. Again, this is for the separation of that detail. Just going to add a point across the center. So you see the front edge is just pulled in from the left side. So you have a little curve in the middle, just like we did with the head. Going up, pull this down. I'm just going to segment off that front edge. Add a few more lines going across the top of the shell. Just going to separate this off. And finally just adding some more detail and shape to that back fin. Again, just adding those guides to separate those scales. Also adding a few wrinkles across the base. Okay, so now that we complete the detailed rough sketch, I'm going to use this as a guide to help us modify the shapes and details. So I'm going to start back at the eyes. We're just going to repeat the same steps, starting with the eye. We're just tracing the same contours. We can modify the shapes if we want to at this stage. Just to get a bit more detail, I'm just going to fully darken up the inside of the eye. Now from here, we're just going to work our way out. I'm not going to get into the shading or tones just yet. We're just looking at the contours and the shapes. And with the separation of these scales, we're just going to still keep these a little bit light. We want to go a little bit lighter in between each of the scales. Now working our way across that fin. You can see I'm just tapering out some of that dark line. Just putting more of the emphasis right where the shadows would be. Now we want to take our time during this stage. We don't want to rush this because we don't want to miss any of those little details. You can spend as much time as you want during this phase. You can see that in between each of these scales, I'm just pulling this in to create a little bit of a point. There's that little extra detail that we can add. This will make our drawing look a little bit more realistic. You see I'm just tapering out some of these wrinkles. So going a little bit heavier around the shadow areas. And then just tapering that out. Now we're going to move in close. I want to show you how to add those details and scales across the body, starting with the head. Now with my 0.9 millimeter, I'm going to move to the side edge. I'm just going to lightly shade that area around the eye. This eye is just a little bit darker around the outside edge. And go up towards the top. Now right here, it's going to lighten this up. And with the direction of the lights and shadows, imagine the light's coming from the top, coming down. So the highlights will sit along the top edge of each shape with the shadows along the bottom edge. So right here, it's going to darken up the bottom. And these shadows are going to give our character some more shape. So just pulling it around towards the bottom. Go back and just clean up our shadows. Let's go a little bit darker along the back side, just to push this in. Now inside each of these scales, I want to leave a little bit of a gap in between. So we're going to start over on the left side of the head. Again, with the side edge of our pencil. Just going to darken this up. Now as you come across, we're just going to fade that out. Again, we're not going to go all the way up towards that line. We want to leave a little bit of a gap. Go back and clean this up. So you see that we have a little bit of a ridge in the center. Let's go up to this section up here. Starting off dark and then coming down. Now this area is going to be a little bit lighter because again, the highlight is sitting along the top. So the light's reflecting off the top edge of the head. So you can darken out the bottom of the eye and then fade that up. Let's go to this section here. Again, we're going to darken up the bottom. Leave a little bit of gap, and just fade that up. We're going to do the same thing to each of these sections. We just want to rough this in. Doesn't have to be perfect. But as long as we go a little bit lighter across the top, so we catch that reflection. And go a bit darker along the sides. Right, a few spots coming down, and just fade that out. Now with the bottom area of the head, we're just going to add a little bit of reflection across the edge. Just going to step in, just going to darken that up, and then lightly fade that across. And we also want to darken up the bottom, just to round this out. We're just going to fade that up. Now the bottom half of the head is in a lighter tone than the top of the shell. Let's start with a medium shade and then fade that in. Also across the neck. Now this area of the neck is going to get pushed into shadow. So let's start on the back side. I'm going to darken that up across the top and then fade that up. And the shell is going to cast a shadow across the top and then fade that down. Just darken up the bottom edge of that fin because this ridge is going to pull it around, casting a shadow, and then we'll fade that down. Now with this ridge, we just want to add a little bit of highlight along the bottom edge. Darken up the center. Fade that down and then up. So we got a little bit of reflection along that edge. Now we're going to come back and add some more detail on top after. So it's okay at this stage if things get blended out. Now let's separate some of those scales from the bottom. Just going to add these little sections of shading. Same thing across the ridge. Starting from the outside, just fading those in. Just adding these large sections. Now let's go to the front fin. We're going to do the same thing we did with the head. It's going to separate each of those sections with a shaded area. I'm also leaving a little bit of a highlight across the front edge. So a gap in between. Just going to blend this all the way down towards the bottom. We're going to go from the back, working our way in. Now we just want to fill the gaps in between. Again, just leaving a gap in between each of those scales and the sections. Shade the bottom of the body and then fade that up. Now this back fin, we're going to push this into shadow. So we're going to create some depth here. Darken up the top and then fade that down. And we can also create the illusion of depth by adding less detail in the background. So anything closer to us will have a lot more detail than things in the back. Just going to roughly add those scales in, just kind of blurring those out. Just feathering it out towards the sides. And with this background element, it's more important to capture the right tones and shadows than it is with the detail. Now let's do the same thing across the shell. Starting with this bottom edge first. Again, we're going to create sections here. So adding a little gap in between. Again, just using the side edge of our pencil to create these scales. I'm Just going to go a little bit lighter as we go back. I'm going to add a light tone across the top. Now I'm going to go a lot lighter along the top of the shell. So the reflection from the water is going to just reflect off the top of the shell. So we want to go a little bit darker across the bottom and just gradually fade that up to get this effect. There's also another effect that sits on top of the shell, which is called caustic lighting. Now this is sort of the reflection of the light coming down through the water and just casting on top of the shell. So it kind of looks like these little waves going across. Just going to add that across the base and just fade that up. It's almost like these little patches going across, like water waves. I also want to enhance those lines in between. I can switch back to our 0.5mm and start layering on some detail on top of our shadows and tones. And this is where we can get all the realism in our drawing. I'm going to start with this fin and work our way across towards the right. So we just want to darken up the edges of those wrinkles. And pick up some of those detail inside the highlights. If you want, you can go back and add a second level of detail to those scales, just cleaning them up. So I'm just going to do a little bit here. Now, as we get closer to the end of our drawing, we're just going to tighten up our shadows and add a little bit more detail, and always be sure to sign our artwork. And that's pretty much it. There's module 2 of our summer sketch camp on how to draw a sea turtle. I want to thank you for joining me today and for your continued support. Keep practicing. I'll see you in the next one.